Good morning, Jennifer, ma'am.
Morning.
Yeah, good morning to you and good evening to us.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's almost dinner time for you.
So another 5 minutes, we'll start. Okay.
Okay, sounds good. And my presentation, I think I'll probably come out around maybe take about like maybe 45 minutes and then we'll have plenty of time for questions if that
Yeah.
sounds good.
Okay.
Cool.
A warm good evening to all of you. Good morning to people who have joined from USA, especially Jennifer ma'am. Uh, I am tremendously happy that it's our fifth webinar series in the Trends of Anthropology webinar series by CMDR, Center for Multidisciplinary Development Research. And we are very happy that from exploring non-governmental sector jobs to UX design, UX anthropology, research, UX research. From there, we went to environmental anthropology, and today we are here to listen to Jennifer ma'am on the topic business anthropology. And I'm very happy to invite all the faculties who are joined from various organizations, as well as researchers, especially from Anthropological Survey of India, like Dr. Rajendra Prasad sir, Dr. Sadanand Sugandhi sir, and all the faculties who have joined. I'm extremely happy for all of them who have joined. Now I'd request our dear Director Sir of CMDR, Dr. Basaprabhu Jirli sir, to speak about the institution and the intent behind the trends in anthropology series.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Datta Niranjan. At the outset, let me extend my sincere welcome as well as gratitude to Jennifer from USA, who is the co-chair of Anthropology Career Readiness Network, who has kindly consented to deliver fifth webinar series of CMDR, Center for Multidisciplinary Development Research. So this is a unique research institution which was established in the year 1980. Since then, it is working for the cause of society, finding out the reasons behind the development as well as the developmental initiatives to be taken up by the government. And it is one of the policy input institution for the state as well as the union government, the central government in Indian conditions. So institution has many significant achievements. The reports of the institutions are considered by the state in its policy making, especially on the regional imbalance, tobacco control. Then various developmental programs launched by the government, we are evaluating and giving inputs to the government, because of which the government has changed the policies because of the research inputs from this institution. So these are some of the main activities of this institution, which is working since 1980. So this unique series of webinar is the brainchild of one of our faculty, Dr. Jai Prabhakar, who is basically an anthropologist, and he is working here as a assistant professor. And he has taken this initiative to instill some motivation among the co-anthropologists, as well as his number of students are there who are very keen, because this subject is not in many of the institutions, many of the universities in India. So that is why he took this initiative to give them a motivation and how they can pursue their careers as a researcher, as a professional, because now it has been taken the shape of psychology, we can say. In many of the corporate institutions are also looking for the anthropologist in different capacities. But what kind of skills that these anthropologists should have to work with corporate bodies? So that is the one of the main issue that this webinar is focusing, for which again we need to congratulate the entire team led by Dr. Jay Prabhakar, and Datta is taking a lot of interest in this, even though he's a researcher, he himself is a student, but he's taking a lot of initiatives. Definitely, I appreciate his efforts. So just for the information of the house, so in today's program, we have some great personalities who are specialized in the field of anthropology in Indian context, as well as their works are recognized globally. Professor M.R. Gangadhar sir, who is currently the Vice Chancellor of Chamarajanagar University, he is on the platform, and he will be sharing a few minutes because he has some other engagement also as a Vice Chancellor, and he is one of the very rarest of the rare anthropologists in India. That what we can say is there are a number of contributions. Along with him, Professor Sugandhi Sabi is there from Karnataka University, and Professor T.T. Basangoda, who is head of the Department of Anthropology, again, Karnataka University, and another head of the department from Mysore University, Dr. Basavarajappa, and number of researchers as well as assistant as well as associate professors who are in this group now to listen to you. And definitely they are all going to be the beneficiaries of your discussion on business anthropology, because this is a very unique topic. When Dr. Prabhakar said this, so I never thought of anthropology can take the shape of business. So definitely we are looking for the very interesting inputs from you and how it can take the shape of business, and the learners can be professionals, especially in the area of business. So this is what is our anticipation from you today. So with this, I welcome you to this institution, as well as I welcome all the delegates who are part of this. Thank you.
Thank you, dear
Thank
sir.
you.
I'm very happy that you shared your wishes with us. Now we have in the house, we have our Professor Gangadhar sir, who is Vice Chancellor of Chamarajanagar University. I would request Professor Gangadhar sir to share his views on this webinar. Sir, please.
Hello, good evening to one and all. At the first, I would like to congratulate Professor Jilly and Dr. Jay Prabhakar for organizing this webinar, and I also congratulate the resource person. Business anthropology is a new trend, and now, as per the new NEP model, so we have introduced in anthropology as one of the business anthropology is one of the paper. So it's a right time to organize this webinar, and it will be very useful for all the budding anthropologists. So with these few words, I thank the organizer for giving me an opportunity to share my views. Once again, I congratulate CMDR and all the faculty members, especially Datta Niranjan also, for involving in this type of webinar. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your wishes, sir. We are very pleased to have you here on this platform. And now I would request Dr. Jay Prabhakar sir to introduce our guest resource person, Ms. Jennifer Stadbaker. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I will not take much time, because since the resource person, all of them are waiting for the resource person. So and airports and all. So this already my director as well as Professor M.R. Gangadhar and Datta Niranjan brief about what exactly the webinar is doing, and also about the business anthropology. Here our students are very much keen to know that what sort of skill sets are required, as well as the how to recognize the practice opportunities all those things, and also how the skills will be helpful for them to getting into the opportunities in the different fields of anthropology as well as the in the in other fields. So let me introduce Jennifer Studebaker. Probably I'm pronouncing correct, Madam Studebaker.
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah. Okay. She's Bachelor of Arts of Anthropology in Indiana University in 2010 and Master of Science Anthropology in Purdue University in 2012. And Jennifer had experience as project and business integration specialist in 2019, marketing and operations manager 2018 to 2019, and account analyst service management group from June 2017 to 2018, and research analyst from my sidewalk in July 2016 to 2017, and program specialist. And also, Miss Jennifer is also being involved in voluntary service, like working group lead, co-chair, assessment group chair, and trustee on Glenn Carter Memorial Tool Share, and fundraising chair in 2010 to 2012. She always open to learn some new tools also. See, her expertise in many skill tools as well. And Studebaker published many articles in national and international and reputed journals. And also, she presented many uh, seminars and conferences. So the list is very big, but I don't want to take that time.
Yeah, you don't have to read them all.
So with this, I request Jennifer ma'am to make a presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me in the wonderful introduction. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All right, can you all see that?
Yes, yes.
All right. So the focus of our topic today is discovering careers in business anthropology. So you already got a little introduction to me, so I won't go through this. So I currently run my own business, Studebaker Consulting LLC. But also I spend quite a bit of my time volunteering as co-chair of the Anthropology Career Readiness Network. So my agenda today, I'm going to give a brief introduction around ACRN, as well as diving into what is business anthropology. And then we'll look at some of the career paths that are available for those that work in business anthropology, followed by an example of a project that I myself did that I would call business anthropology to give an example of how you can apply those skills in the workplace. And then I'll have some sort of final tips and takeaways. So the Anthropology Career Readiness Network, our mission is to help prepare the next generation of anthropologists to meet tomorrow's challenges and opportunities, whatever they may be. And this group, it's a completely volunteer run currently. We are considering maybe becoming a 501c3, but Elizabeth Bryety founded this in 2021 following her Malinowski speech that she gave at the Society for Applied Anthropology. And Elizabeth has been a pretty well-established and respected business anthropologist for several decades. She's known for her work with General Motors. And she teamed up with actually one of my former advisors and committee members, Ryle Nolan, who he's done a lot of work in international development, as well as he worked as an administrator within universities running international programs. So both of them have a lot of practice experience, as we describe, those that work outside of academia in anthropology. So they came together recognizing there is a real need to better prepare students for the workforce, because nothing against professors. Being a professor is a job, but that's only a job that most instructors know. So there was really an opportunity to help better prepare instructors to teach students, as well as provide resources for students. And so definitely check out our website. We also have a workbook that we recently published last summer called Career Tools for Anthropology. And some of the other resources we have. So we have these tools. I'm going to reference several of these throughout my presentation. So these tools are sort of brief handouts. They're all available on our website, anthrocareerready.net. And these tools, we also compiled the ones that are focused on job seekers within this workbook. And these are all available. They're meant to inform you on specific topics. So we've got some that I'm going to cover today that cover particular careers, but we also have tools that are really around, you know, how to assess your skills, you know, particular skills you might want to use in the workplace, for example, like photo voice or different methods like focus groups, as well as tools focused on how to get jobs. So there's ones around, you know, the interview process, applications, building your resume. So definitely check those out. We also have a speakers bureau. So this is a list of people who are open to guest speaking, like myself, as well as they're really great resources if you have questions about the particular fields that they work in. So all of them, if you visit that directory, they list the type of work that they do. So if you have questions, these are people that you could reach out to for an informational interview as well. We also have the World of Work blog. So these are brief, you know, topical sort of dives around, written by instructors, students, as well as practitioners. And these give insight around different aspects of work and the importance of applying anthropology in the workplace. And then we also partner with universities in helping them. We do 2 per semester, conducting client-based class projects. And in addition to that, we don't have oh, there it is. We also have what's known as the Departmental Advisory Initiative. So this is sort of a pro bono consulting program that we do with anthropology departments, where we will go, we'll work with them over the course of a year, starting with sort of an intensive in-person workshop over the course of 3 days, and have them develop an implementation plan for making their curriculum more career ready. So we also have a lot of resources on the website focused on instructors. So definitely check those out if you're curious about how can I make my own curriculum a little more career oriented. So to start, what is business anthropology? So as you noted, there's not a lot of programs that I'm familiar with in India that teach business anthropology, and that's also true in the United States. I can only think of maybe like 1 or 2 programs that have an orientation towards business anthropology, and it's been a lot of times kind of on the fringe. So I'll get into the history a little bit more, but in terms of what we call, how we define business anthropology, is most people think of applications of anthropology in for-profit companies, so more in the corporate world. But actually, this umbrella also includes people who work in nonprofits as well as government. So it's a very broad umbrella. Oh, I don't know who's drawn there. Thank you. All right, I don't think that's me. Okay. Next up, underneath sort of this umbrella, so these are the places where business anthropologists work. Within business anthropology, there's 3 kind of focus areas that we have. We have organizational research. So this is organizational anthropology, similar to if you're familiar with organizational institutional psychology, where they're really focused on sort of the operations within an institution and the relationships between the people in that. Next, we have marketing and consumer behavior. So this is really understanding why and how people purchase things and use certain products over others. And then last, we have design. So design is really, as I heard you already learned about UXR a little bit. This is where, you know, anthropology is applied for the development of products as well as services as well. So underneath this sort of, you know, umbrella, there's a number of sort of fields and disciplines and areas where business anthropology overlaps and can have impact. So probably the earliest version of this would be within the human relations field. You also have management consulting, diversity studies. So this could include DEI as well as really understanding cross-cultural communication. We have employee experience, so learning how to listen to your employees and improve the workplace. We have marketing, customer experience, so that's one area that I worked in when I was at SMG, as well as user experience research, product and service design, which all of these kind of can overlap too. They're not necessarily distinct essential categories. And then process design and improvement. So the history of business anthropology, we kind of pinpoint it, like there's kind of the groundwork being laid, also in sociology as well at this time, but people really hone in on the establishment of what's known as the Hawthorne effect in the 1920s and 30s. So this the Hawthorne effect is sort of the observation. This is a finding that they made based on a study of the Western Electric Factory in Chicago from 1924 to 1932. And they found that people changed their behavior when observed. So that was sort of the big takeaway. And they tried playing with all these other sort of factors like, you know, the brightness of the lights. But really it came down to that observation was a big impact in terms of how people worked. During the post-war, we also saw some more applications of anthropology in workplaces with sort of this growth of the sort of management studies industry. So you see some influence there. But it was not really established as like a separate sort of discipline from applied anthropology in general, though we saw a starting sort of definition in the 1970s and 1980s with the sort of pressure from increasing globalization. In particular, when you had US automakers starting to work with Japanese automakers and having to sort of reconcile the cultural differences in how people, you know, ran meetings, ran organizations, and interacted with each other. And then in the 1990s into the 2000s, we really saw the formal establishment of the field. In terms of there being a few journals that were established, as well as a lot more literature being produced around this. Elizabeth Brady, as I mentioned, she's one of my mentors. She's really well known for writing about her experience working as an employee at GM and doing internal research. And at the end of my presentation, I do have a list of sort of recommended authors for you all to check out around this. And then today, there's several different ways that you can sort of interact with the business anthropology field. We have the National Association of Practicing Anthropologists, NAPA. If you're a member of the AAA or if you join, NAPA is actually one of the sections that you can join there. So that's a great group to connect with. We also have EPIC. So EPIC was really formed. It's largely folks that work in the tech industry, and you'll find a lot of design anthropologists. And it's not only unique to anthropology, it's anybody that applies ethnography in industry. So there's also sociologists and other designers in that group as well. I think they're doing their upcoming conference in Helsinki this year. And then last but not least, we have the Society for Applied Anthropology. So we have within the Society for Applied Anthropology, there's a TIG, so it's a topical interest group that we recently renamed ourselves. It was formerly just business TIG. Now it's the business, nonprofit, and government TIG to recognize that there is several other sectors in there as well. So one of the questions that I had shared with me in advance was people really wanted to know, you know, what kind of skills do you need to do business anthropology? And really at the core, business anthropology skills are anthropology skills. So what you're learning in terms of your anthropological education should be able to translate to the workplace. It's just sometimes a matter of knowing how and when. So, for example, ethnography, I know people who do, you know, deep ethnographies with companies and organizations where they'll do studies where they like, you know, go into people's homes and see how they interact with their environment, as well as, you know, so that's that type of observation. There's also interviews. So this is one of the methods that I use pretty frequently in my work, individual and group. So focus groups, really, if you think about them, they're just big group interviews. Next, we've got surveys and questionnaires. So those are a type of sort of an asynchronous interview, if you think about it. And then I know there are several folks that work around semiotics. Space Doctors, they're a company that was just started in the past couple of years. They really focus in on this. And next, we've got, relationship and network mapping. So this is one of the methods that we use a lot when we do the departmental advisory visits in terms of helping departments look at sort of the, environment and resources around them that can support them as they develop their curriculum. And then, anthropologists are really good at analyzing systems. We can take that holistic perspective, as well as recognize the importance and value of rituals and seeing those patterns in terms of how people work and talk about things, as well as recognizing power dynamics and the impact that they can have in terms of how people show up in the workplace. So one of the tools that I recommend you check out on our website, this was one of the first ones we put together. So this is translating anthropology skills for the workplace. So what this tool does is we have in this first column here is sort of the training or experience that you get typically in an anthropology program. This could be bachelor's, master's, or PhD. And then why this matters. Why do we care about this in the workplace setting? And then it gives you some examples of terms that will be more commonly used. If you're looking at job descriptions, if you're going to be doing an interview, these are the words that people will recognize as, in terms of translating the meaning of the skills that you've learned and practiced into the workplace. So definitely recommend checking that out. All right. So when it comes to business anthropology, there's a number of different career paths. So I will say, unlike, psychology, where, there's usually pretty clear jobs that people can have. If I get my, master's degree, I can probably go work as a therapist, social worker, whatever. In terms of anthropology, there aren't clear paths. Now, there's some things where people have gone more than others. But I think the biggest thing to recognize is that when you're looking for jobs, the job titles are not going to have anthropologists in it typically. There's a few out there. I'm not going to say it's never going to happen, but most of the time you're going to be looking within certain fields and looking at how your skill set matches with what they're looking for in terms of that job description. And one other thing I want to recognize too, for those of you that may have only an undergrad degree, usually when we talk about practicing anthropology, we're talking about people with master's degrees or higher. And so these would be people having careers in anthropology. So they usually have a graduate degree or a master's. Their roles are typically more research oriented, and they use their anthropology to address and solve problems. But I also want to recognize that, anthropology education has a lot of value in any type of work you do. So this is from A.J. Foss, and Raul likes to quote this a lot. There's also this idea of having a career with anthropology. So anthropology is a really great groundwork for any type of role that you go into. And you can apply your anthropology education to be better at your job, regardless of what it is. And in some cases, better just at life in general, in terms of understanding and interacting with other people. So roles within organizations. So there's several different ways that you can interact with an organization as a business anthropologist. And this is true of any career too. So the first being is you can be an in-house employee. So the benefits to this is you've got that steady paycheck, some level of security, depending on the company. You also have that opportunity to build long-term relationships with coworkers, and there's usually some benefits. Some of the drawbacks, you probably have to do other things than your research. There's probably some budgeting, bookkeeping, that you have to stay on top of. Sometimes there's hierarchies you have to navigate. So you might have a really cool project idea, but you don't get to choose whether you do it or not. Somebody has to approve that. And a lot of times your work location and hours are set by the organization. Next, we've got being a contractor or a freelancer. So this is really attractive and you can set your own hours and work location most of the time. Some companies will try and get you. But you also have the choice of working on varied projects and you can be a little pickier. But the drawbacks there are, really limited job security, your work can be kind of inconsistent and there aren't any benefits. And the third option, and this one you could be an employee within a company that's working as a vendor, or you could also say like have your own business like myself. And this is where like you're a vendor within an organization. So you're somebody that you're a part of a company or an organization that's been hired by the organization that you're doing research in. So the benefits here, usually there's a pretty defined scope of work that you're supposed to work on, like where you're like, this is all I do. I'm not coming here to fix anything else. We're just focused on, looking at your strategy or whatever the topic is. And you'd usually have a degree of independence on how you work. Some of the drawbacks here is, it really depends on the client. So you may say you're your own boss, but you're also responsible to your client that you're working with. A lot of times too, there's also pressure to retain that client or continue selling additional services. And then sometimes, if you're an outside consultant coming into an organization, there can be some trust issues. So if you think about in terms of management consulting, the history there is, if you think about McKinsey and those types of big organizations, usually when they show up, it's because there's going to be cuts made or they're looking at restructuring an organization. People usually aren't excited to see you. That's not true of all consulting work, but that kind of trust is something that has to be built. So I'm going to go through a number of sort of fields that you can go into that are considered business anthropology. I do want to call out that all of these areas that I'm going to discuss have their own designated tool that with more information if you want to know more on the ACRN website. So if you go to the For Students section and click on the Job Seeker and Career Tools, these will all be available here under the section 2 of exploring possible careers. So the first is design anthropology. So design anthropology, this can really be the design of products, services, or systems. Within this, I'm going to cover several sort of subsections with UX, consumer products, services, and process improvement in the next slides. But design anthropology is also found, in architecture is another big one that we probably need to get a tool put together on. You can find them in museums, looking at how to design exhibits. It's really wherever you have people interacting with their physical environment, or in some cases, digital environment. So UX research, you're all likely familiar with this. This is probably the most established path to the tech industry for anthropologists. I will call out that I do think it's a bit of a flooded market right now because you have a lot of people who aren't anthropologists as well that have UX training. There's been a lot of boot camps. It's been very popular. And also with sort of the they say market adjustments post-COVID, research, unfortunately, a lot of the times in tech companies is the first thing to get cut when they're trying to save money. So I would be hesitant to encourage anybody to go into UX right now, but if a lot of those skills can translate into other areas too. So I think if you did get UX training, don't be sad because some of these other ones I'm going to go through are areas where your skills can also be applied. And it also overlaps a lot with the human-computer interaction studies. So UXR is where a lot of anthropologists end up, but if you happen to have design skills, you can also come over here too. I know several people who have both and they can, kind of handle both sides of the table. And, where you're going to find this, all of those big tech companies, but also you'll find it sometimes in smaller organizations as well. You might even see it in terms of local governments, in terms of, certain processes that they need to develop. Next, we've got consumer products and services. So consumer product services is where you apply your anthropology research skills to focus on what and how people buy, experience, share, and dispose of products or services. So this is really that more market research area and understanding, why did I buy this over another thing? This can overlap some with that design in terms of recognizing opportunities for new products. I think some of the examples they really love to give at the AAA of impacts anthropology's had in terms of the products. So I don't know if you have rotisserie chickens in India, there's Costco or not, but the idea of having like a ready to baked chicken that you can just pick up and buy and take home. That was actually developed by based on anthropological research. Another one too, and actually this is Susan Squires. She's one of our volunteers with ACRN and a professor at UNT. She was a part of research that led to the development of Go-Gurt. So if you think of those tubes of yogurt, I don't know if you have them, but these are examples of where they think about, okay, what do people need? How are we trying to solve a problem for them and make a product that meets that? And I've got some snapshots here with different, these are all from the tools. So these are some of the job titles that you'll find people working in. I previously worked in consumer insights or customer experience. They kind of use that back and forth. Sometimes you'll see the word voice of the customer too. And what I did at SMG, that service management group, which I do know they hire folks from India, so I'll throw that out there. What we did was customer feedback surveys. So if you go to a restaurant and you get the receipt and there's like a little link down at the bottom that, if you take the survey, you get like a free meal the next time you visit. We were the people on the other end analyzing all of that research and presenting it back to the companies to help them advise how to improve their products and services. So it's really it was fun and interesting work. And a lot of reading comments. So I really found that a lot of fun to do. And it's a really great starter kind of work in terms of putting your toe into that business anthropology world. Because a lot of the companies that work in this space are highly corporate. So I would say these are ones where there's a lot of entry roles. So that analyst role I was in back at SMG, it was sort of the first sort of tier you get in. And then actually I think it was the second tier. So I came in because I had a bachelor's, and then you get promoted to account manager. And then the next level would be director. And then, you could be VP. So a lot of these companies have pretty clear hierarchies to navigate. Next is process improvement. So this one is a little more challenging in that there's not always clearly defined roles. You're going to see a lot of different titles for this type of work, but process improvement, it's really about looking at how people work and how organizations function to look for efficiencies and improve the experience. So this is actually something I've done quite a bit in my work in different organizations that I've worked at. And it draws a lot on project management methodologies. So sometimes, for example, in the job titles, you'll see lean facilitator. There's a lot of different disciplines you can kind of draw on to do process improvement. But the example that I'm going to be sharing later on, it will be an example of process improvement. So you can see a little bit of how that gets applied. And in my company, I offer what I call process design. So it is a form of, process improvements included in that umbrella, but also it's really thinking about how do you do something in your company. So it might be, hey, we need to figure out how to onboard employees more consistently and put together the resources and training around that. Or it could be, we've got a new software that we're going to be introducing, and how do we integrate that into our current processes. Next, we have management consulting. So this is a pretty well-established industry. You're likely familiar with some of the bigger firms, and a lot of these are accounting as well. So you've got KPMG, Deloitte, PricewaterhouseCoopers, and Ernst & Young. So these are the big four. I will say, I think hiring is kind of slowing down in that space as well, just giving you a heads up. But it's similar to I said with the consumer products research, a lot of these organizations are highly corporate, and that there are clear sort of entry points. So you start off probably mostly editing PowerPoints, and then you get to be the one that presents the PowerPoint, and then you can work your way up sort of the ladder in terms of the work that you get to do. But I also want to call it, there are a lot of boutique firms out there, and a lot of these smaller firms, you could probably even call my business a type of management consulting. These mostly focus on specific specializations. So there may be people who focus on leadership and management, human relations, business development. And you can see here some of the job keywords that you'd want to search for if you're looking on LinkedIn or something similar. Next, we have the diversity, equity, and inclusion industry. So this is relatively new, and unfortunately, US, it's kind of controversial. I will say there are still jobs out there in this space. And, you know, this type of work, it's really focused on creating change in organizations to be more fair, equitable, and welcoming to employees, as well as those they serve. So really thinking about how do we, you know, meet people where they're at and make them feel at home. And you'll find DEI usually situated under human relations, though in some cases, some organizations did create sort of their standalone departments. Obviously, we're not going to have that at the federal level in the US right now, but you will find it in companies still. And there has been some movement, though this is started before DEI became big. You'll also see sometimes like people management or people relations or culture. So at my previous workplace, you know, our head of HR was known as, you know, the chief people officer or the chief talent and culture officer. So those are some of the ways that that language will show up as well. Next, we have nonprofits. So this is a really big sector. So we can drill into this a little more if people have questions after. But within this, you have nonprofit organizations. So you know, here in the US, it's 501c3s, but this also includes NGOs and a lot of other larger organizations. You also have philanthropies. So in this case, I'm referring to grant-making organizations that, like the Kauffman Foundation, where I previously worked, where they're not necessarily providing services or just writing checks. It's usually the primary work being done. And then there's also a lot of sector-specific consulting and service. So there's a lot of people who specifically focus on working with nonprofit organizations. So I actually worked at one previously, Bern Pulofsky, which I think they changed their name again. They've changed it 3 times. That was a nonprofit fundraising consulting firm. So they were a for-profit consulting company that worked with nonprofits. They wanted to do capital campaigns, so raise large sums of money for building and building or implementing programs. So in that case, we helped them out doing feasibility studies around whether that campaign would be something that would be successful, because there's nothing worse than trying to raise $10 million and only get to 2. And then we also help them out with donor research. So really looking at, you know, who are the prospective donors for the projects that they're trying to work on. And within the nonprofit sector, there's a lot of different types of jobs. So I've got these kind of chunked out into 4 different areas. So we've got administration and management. So think about executive directors, and those that are really leading the organizations and managing people and services. You have development engagement. So this includes that, you know, fundraising, fund development, as well as community engagement. So it's really about connecting with the community and the people that you're trying to reach. You also have strategy and coordination. So I know a lot of people who work in this consulting space that they specialize in strategic planning. So most nonprofits need to put together a strategic plan every 3 to 5 years. So there's a lot of consultants, and having an anthropology background is a really great skill set to be a strategic planner. So in that type of work, a lot of times you're going to come in and interview staff, you're going to interview stakeholders in the community, and then synthesize all that information, maybe do some research on, you know, so the landscape within the community, and put together recommendations on how that organization should move forward. And then last but not least, we have research and evaluation. So some organizations have like their standalone research departments, as well as evaluations, really looking at the success of their programs and, you know, whether the grant met its goals, or if, you know, all the people that you're trying to impact are actually receiving the services. Next, we've got project management. So project management is kind of more of a field similar to anthropology, where it's just a number of methodologies and sort of approaches that can be applied in any industry or sector. Though I would say, especially here in the United States, it's most well established within, I would say, the construction industry. So you need a project manager to make sure you've got all of the supplies and stay on schedule in terms of building. As well as tech. So tech, a lot of times you'll see Agile and Scrum pop up as ways they describe how they approach project management. So within project management, there's kind of like 3 different ways you can do it. So you've got the predictive path. So that's also known as waterfall. It's the more traditional project management approach where you have like a set deadline and you schedule everything back from that. And then you have to problem solve. You probably put a little cushion in there. And then we have what's known as agile. And this includes a large number of things like Scrum and several other approaches. And that's really where you're working in short sprints, and it's iterative and there's a lot of adjustments. And it's usually when you're working towards something where you don't have like a clear vision yet of what it's going to be. And that's why in tech it's really helpful. But then there's also like a lot of hybridization that can happen between those two. So the Project Management Institute is the main certifying organization if you want to learn more about project management. The PMP certification, which I do have, is the most common certification to get. I will say, you know, it takes some studying, but it's actually one of the relatively more accessible certifications out there. If you have a bachelor's degree, you only have to have 3 years of experience to apply. If you don't have 3 years of experience, you have to have, or if you don't have a bachelor's degree, you have to have 6 years of experience in project management to be able to take the test. Yeah, project management, it's one of those things too that I think a lot of people take for granted, that as an anthropologist, as a researcher, a lot of times you're already doing project management. If you think about in terms of defining the scope of the work, you know, the timeline that you're going to be delivering on and working towards. So this is one of those skills that I think, you know, anthropologists don't always realize that they do have. Next, we have creating your own consulting practice or joining one. So a lot of the anthropology practitioners and business anthropologists you're going to find out there usually have their own business or practice with others. And the benefit here is that you get to, you know, have some degree of freedom. You get to do that longer term research. They usually focus in on a particular industry. Some of the drawbacks though of starting your own business, and I'm only about 5 months into mine, is it can take a while to get started. You know, people have to know you're out there and what you do. And I will say with business anthropology, it's good for getting people's attention, but they don't know what that means that you can do for them. So you need to really think through of your pitch, like, okay, I can help you create processes that, you know, don't make you want to pull your hair out. I can help you understand your customers better. And one of the things that I've recognized, and I think this is true for any type of workplace, but especially in starting your own business, networking is essential. You really need to talk to other people. This is not something you can do on your own and that clients will just come. You have to get out there. One of the things I did before I started my own business is I met with several people that had companies that, you know, I wanted to be like. And I asked all of them how they got their clients. And every time it was word of mouth. So, you know, you can buy ads, you can send emails, but really at the end of the day, it's going to be people recommending you. All right, so those are some of the career paths. That's not fully exhaustive. And I think the other thing to recognize too about business anthropology and anthropology in general is there's jobs out there that haven't been invented yet. And anthropology gives you some of that versatility where you can kind of fill in those gaps where it's like, yeah, I know a lot of people now who are working on, you know, human interactions with AI. That wasn't necessarily an option a few years ago in terms of available jobs. So really recognize that your anthropology skills can help you sort of research and recognize where there may be growing and you know, burgeoning markets that you can join in on, and that, you know, you can apply those skills really in any context where you have people interacting with their environment. All right, so because there were a lot of questions around how you do business anthropology, I wanted to provide an example of a project that I did. So this project was really around evaluating a CRM launch and its adoption. So CRM is customer relationship management software systems. So if you're familiar with Salesforce, or there's some other ones out there, though Salesforce was actually the one in this case. So I went into this project with the following research questions. So we were introducing Salesforce to the organization, and we wanted to understand if we were successful in terms of that launch and rollout. And in this case, we were working in a nonprofit organization. So a lot of the times when CRMs are implemented, it's in a sales context where you're trying to keep track of customers, leads, and seeing that sort of sales pipeline. But in this organization, we weren't the ones that, were trying to get money. We were usually the ones trying to give away money. So how do you motivate people to use a CRM in a nonprofit environment when there may not be a strong incentive of where I'm trying to get that commission? And then last, the additional question, this is really that process improvement piece, is how can we improve, what we're doing? So assessing, the success of the launch and like, what are some of the things that we can tweak and change? All right, so my approach to this, and I think one of the things to recognize about business anthropology, and I always kind of laugh when people are like, what about the rigor of the research? So when you're working in like business contexts, a lot of the times your bosses don't care about, how rigorous or the, significance and all the variables. They really want answers. And I think it's also important to look at the size of the organization you're working at and the number of people that you're going to be able to talk to. So in this case, I did a total of 14 interviews. So 3 with the CRM team and 11 associates. And this was really over a 6-month timeline. And that was really just because of the spacing of some of the activities that happened. Some of the other projects I've done have been much shorter, where it's like 3 or 4 months. Though I have had the luxury of doing a project that took about a year. So one of the things to think about in business anthropology is you're most of the time in anthropology, you're trying to spend like a year focusing on a topic, but a lot of times you're going to have to work more rapidly. I also did participant observation since I was, in this case, an employee at the organization. So I was present for a lot of the discussions that were had. So this kicked off with the interviewing the team that was going to be leading the CRM launch. I participated as an observer in our training session. So in this case, they actually brought out an outside consulting firm to lead the trainings. And then in January and through February, I did interviews with associates, reflecting on those trainings, as well as asking them about their own interactions and usage of the CRM. And then I put together an internal report and presentation to share. So coming to that question of, how do you motivate people that don't have a profit motive in this case? I really honed in on sort of these 3 different sort of mindsets and motivations. Now, not if necessarily everybody had only one, but these were some of the ways that we could use language to influence people and encourage them to use it. So for those that were mission driven, in this case, this was an organization that was really focused on, supporting the public good. So emphasizing that we can help people, we can do a better job, we can make a difference if we're more consistent in how we interact with the community. So one of the reasons why we're implementing the CRM in this organization is that there hadn't been good cross-organization communication around who would talk to who. So it's pretty embarrassing if your coworker just had a call with somebody that morning and they come in for a meeting with you in the office and you have no idea what they talked about. So this was really a way to try and create better cross-organization communication. Also, there was a lot of people that were in this type of work because they care about people and they want to, be better at having relationships and being connected. And last but not least, there's a lot of people who get into this type of work because they like the challenge. It's intellectual, it's solving puzzles. So these were sort of some of the ways that we could motivate people in terms of thinking about messaging of the why you need to use the CRM. Now, last but not least, we have sort of the findings. So the recommendations that I put together, the first one was really establishing clear policies on why and when and who uses the CRM. And with this, also creating sort of role-based guides in terms of how you're going to use the software. Because coming back, I actually skipped over this. So when it comes to CRMs, a lot of people think about the technology. So we've got Salesforce, that's the tool. But to have a successful CRM, you need to have a clear process in terms of how it's being used. And you have to have the people that use it, because it's only as good as the information that goes in. And so coming back, in this case, we had a lot of different types of roles and people weren't always sure, oh, is this something that applies to me in terms of the type of work we do? So would an administrative assistant need to use the tool the same as a program officer? Not necessarily. So there's certain types of skills that we needed to train them around and to be successful at their work. I also recommend that we do regular trainings. So a lot of times in companies and organizations, you get trained on the tool once. And it's in that first week where you're like, what am I doing? Where am I? And people don't necessarily remember what they're supposed to do. So having a set person that they know they can go ask for help, as well as regularly scheduled trainings and refreshers. So, you can have sort of the introduction onboardings for the new staff, but, maybe have it open to, those that might have forgotten what they learned last quarter and want to come join. We also identified the need to have clear communications around the why we're using the tool. Also, thinking about that observation, one of the things that I recognized was I went and hung out with the front desk receptionist. And one of the ways that we captured a lot of the data into the CRM was through this tablet at the check-in, where people needed to sign in and pick who they're meeting with. Well, one of the problems that we had is that the unique identifier we were using in the CRM was people's emails. So each time the email would go in, it would create a new record, or they could find themselves based on their email. A lot of the times people were in a rush, and some people have very long emails. So some people were just typing in like na@q.com or abbreviating their email. So we're creating duplicate records in the system. So this is an example of where you can identify a process improvement in terms of how people are interacting with that technology. And also, they did bring in some additional help, but at the time I did this research, we really had one person that was the established in-house Salesforce expert, and I identified like, you're going to need some more help. So the impact of this research, things did get slowed a little down by COVID because this happened in 2019. But we did have continued adoption, and I was able to, based on looking at other CRM implementations, to say that we were successful in our rollout and that we had around, I think, 30–40% of people using it, and not everybody needed to use the tool. Though we did have some data hygiene issues, as I mentioned. And that report is still informing work. Now, this is one, warning I have, because I was the person going around and talking to people and asking them about Salesforce. In this organization, I ended up being the main CRM trainer. So I said, oh, you need more staff. And they're like, cool, it can be you. So word of warning there too, if you're doing in-house research. So my final tips and takeaways, I want you to know that, anthropology is incredibly versatile. You can really apply it in any type of work context. And most business anthropology jobs and jobs in general will not have anthropology in the title or job description. So you do have to be creative about thinking about where do I fit, and my skills can have an impact. And one of the things that we provide a lot of resources and training on at ACRN is how to communicate the value of what you can offer. And so I don't have a slide for it, but we are also doing a webinar series with the Applied Anthropology Network. And one of the ones in that series, I think it's in June, Raul's going to be presenting, is around explaining anthropology to others. So, what can you do? This will give you some practice explaining, to prospective employers, but also in some cases, it might be your parents that you need to be like, look, I'm not throwing my life away. There's jobs. And last but not least, I know this can vary depending on, different cultures. I spoke to some folks in Europe where they said, usually you start in one job and you kind of stay in that sector, and jumping around is a very American thing. But I do want to say, when it comes to any of these types of workplaces or roles, you can move. So if you get into, say, consumer insights research and you're like, this is fun, but I really want to do management consulting, you can jump over. A lot of these skills can cross transfer really easily across industries as well as sectors and particular roles. So definitely check out our website for more of our career tools. And I've included this. I'll put it in my write-up that I'm going to share as well. These are some recommended resources out there for those who want to know more about business anthropology. I'm one practitioner. I'm not going to say I'm like, a leading, scholar in the business anthropology space. So definitely check out some of these authors here. These are some of the organizations that I've already mentioned. As well as there's some podcasts out there. We've Matt Arts, he's got 2 of them. Yeah, he's really on top of it. He's got Anthro to UX. So that one's really focused on particularly UX careers, as well as anthropology and business. So I do have an interview on there if you want to hear that one. And then Adam Gamwell, he's done a lot of great work too around this Anthro Life, where you can learn about how to talk about anthropology and apply it in the workplace. And he also has a YouTube channel. But also there's several other video series you can check out. He has Anthropologists on the Public Stage. This is something that they worked on, I think, with the Renner Grant. Elizabeth Bridey, I know, is a part of this project. And then NAPA, which I mentioned over here, they have a series, I think you can find it on their website, called Snap-a-Shots, where they do interviews with different practitioners. So these are people working all different types of organizations. So that's a really great way to learn about what it's like to work in a particular industry. And depending on their availability, those folks also might be open to an informational interview. And then, as I mentioned, the Applied Anthropology Network Career Paths webinar series. So we do have another one next week. All of those videos are available on YouTube, currently on their the Applied Anthropology Network YouTube. But the workshop coming up next week, which you're all welcome to sign up for, I'll make sure to share it on LinkedIn, and I can send the link for you guys to share out earlier or later. That one is going to be focused on domains of practice. So if you're really trying to understand, like, what are the areas that I can work in and how do I identify which one is like the right fit for me, I really encourage you checking out that webinar. Raul usually provides a workshop at the Society for Applied Anthropology. So I know he's pulling from some of his curriculum for that, for this particular one. And I myself actually attended that workshop as a newly minted graduate degree holder, and I found it incredibly helpful in terms of thinking about my own career path. So I will end with a very big thank you to you all for having me join, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Jennifer. Now, I have switched on the chat option. One, you can raise your hand and ask the question here, or you can type your question in the chat box so that we can answer one by one. Yes. The floor is open for questions. Please kindly type or raise your hand so that we can take your questions one by one. While the participants type their questions, I think Jennifer's book, Careers Tools in Anthropology, is available on Amazon. She will share the link and we can share it in the group. That's the information I can give you now.
Yeah. And don't be afraid to ask questions. I saw there were some that were shared in advance. I don't think if I didn't answer all of those, we can maybe tackle some of them. Let me pull those up. I will share that I am not super familiar with the job market in India. But I do know that there are a lot of American companies that do hire contractors and freelancers from India. So there may be some opportunities in that space as well.
We are waiting for your questions. Otherwise, we can wind it up. Good.
Since many of the participants are still thinking and also writing, so I'm having one question to clarification also, you can say that. So, do anthropologists are having some careers in to become the counselors? Are there any such kind of job opportunities in USA? Counselor kind of a thing. Suppose if having some kind of a conflict in the home or in the society, please.
Yeah, I would say in the United States, most of the times if you're going to be a counselor, that's like overlaps with a therapist. So a lot of that certifications are more in the psychology space. But I do know a lot of anthropologists that have gone into the coaching industry. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but there's been like a big boom of people who are sort of personal life coaches. So in this case, you know, that's one area where your anthropology skill set can be applied. But I would say in a bachelor's degree in anthropology would be a really great pre-social work degree if you're going to be going into that space. So yeah, I would say it's something that would be supportive of that type of work as a counselor.
If any questions, we can post it in the group and Jennifer can definitely answer. When we were speaking with Jai Prabhakar sir about when we were discussing, sir asked question whether Jennifer will come to this institution, like it is for a talk. And as we wrote email to her, and she agreed it instantly. And okay, there is one question. Okay.
Some key research areas in anthropology
yes.
today. Well, I would say one of the growing areas of research in anthropology, because you've got sort of the typical subfields, and I would say those are all still going pretty strong. One of the growing areas, and I would recommend checking out Matt Artz's new book, Emerging Technologies, is really around AI and the impacts of that on societies and people's interactions with it. So I would say that's one that's a growing space. Yeah, that's probably the one I would call out. That's the most, I guess, increasing. I would say that there is growing interest and I would say respect for business anthropology as a field. For a lot of times, I think it's worth to recognize that business anthropology has been very marginalized, where a lot of people are like, oh, you're sellouts, you know, you're not doing real research, you know, and or it's like you're being unethical, you know. That has really led to like business anthropology being kind of like in its own little corner for a really long time. But I do think with the acknowledgement that the job market for academics is not growing and definitely probably going to shrink in the next few years, there's a lot of people who are showing interest into moving into, I guess, alt-ac, as they like to say, jobs. So is there a difference between business anthropology and organizational anthropology? I wouldn't really say there is. I would say organizational anthropology is sort of a subset within business anthropology. And yeah, I know a lot of people who work in that space. They usually do work that's kind of more oriented towards management consulting, that do that type of organizational research. What are the themes that are typically studied in PhD studies in business anthropology? Well, I actually don't have a PhD in business anthropology, so I don't necessarily know what's on the curriculum. But I can share that I'm assuming that they go through your typical anthropology training. Like, you have to have that, at least in the United States, you have that grounding in those 4 subfields. You have to show an understanding of that. But then, yeah, there's more topical research. And a lot of times you're going to have to probably take classes in other disciplines. So to be honest, most people I know that are professors and business anthropologists aren't in anthropology departments. For example, Bob Moraes at Columbia, I think he's in the business school. As well as Timothy Malafite at Fordham University. Wayne State is one of the programs that I do know has a PhD in business anthropology. And I could probably connect you with some people if you had questions about that particular program. But a lot of the times what you're going to need to do if you're wanting to study business anthropology is, and this is true of any sort of field or discipline you want to study in anthropology, you want to look at who's on the faculty and identify who's going to be your advisor and reach out to that person and see if they're taking students. Because you're going to be best supported by having a professor that understands business anthropology and does it. Otherwise, you're going to be kind of having to self-teach a lot. All right, so the next question is, are there any opportunities for anthropologists building social enterprises among less advantaged in society? Yeah, I would say that there's a lot of people. So I'm here in Kansas City, which, because we have the Kauffman Foundation, there's a large sort of entrepreneurial community. And one of the things I've recognized is that there's people who started businesses like myself, but there's also people who start nonprofits. So there are a lot of opportunities, I would say, in terms of applying those anthropology skills and perspectives to be better at running a nonprofit or recognizing the need for one. I would say the biggest thing when you're trying to support other people is ask them what they really need before you're like, hey, you guys all need new shirts. And they're like, no, we're good on shirts. We could really use some food, thanks. Next, so what are the best European universities to opt for a PhD in anthropology? So I will be honest, I'm not super familiar with all of the universities in Europe. I do know that if you're interested in design anthropology, there's a lot of strong programs in Scandinavia, looking at like Denmark and Sweden and Norway, or oriented around that. But yeah, I can't recommend any particular programs. I would recommend doing some research around that. Can you apply business anthropology in rural areas? Definitely. So anywhere there's a business, anywhere there's an organization or an institution you're trying to understand. I actually know some people who, one case, he's one of my colleagues, oh gosh, I'm blanking on his last name. Ryan, he's out in Manhattan, Kansas, and he's a farmer. He's got his own farm, but he also works as an anthropology practitioner working with companies. So for example, I know he's done a lot of work around employee experience, with, manual laborers on farms, helping people understand, how to better improve, as well as retain employees in terms of them wanting to come back to work. Are there specific areas in business anthropology where a biological anthropology background is particularly valuable? So I'll share that, for myself, in terms of my anthropology background, I was really doing biocultural research when I was working on my master's degree. I did a lot of research around food choice and its impact on chronic disease management. So I will say that even if you only have like training in one area in anthropology, you can translate that into business contexts. But I would say that there's a really growing field. And I would say one of the areas where I would say there is growing demand would be in the healthcare industry. So that's where I would say that biological anthropology perspective could be really helpful if you're a medical anthropologist, and having that perspective in terms of, designing systems, but also, the delivery of programs to people. If you think about, providing medical care. And so that's where I would say that would translate the most. The practice sort of paths for biological anthropologists, a lot of times they end up working in nonprofits that are oriented towards sort of the topics they care about. Say, like, I've got, if you're a primatologist, you might end up working for like the World Wildlife Fund or something like that. But also there's the forensic anthropology is also another sort of more defined path. And we do have a new tool on that on the website if you're curious. Is it necessarily important to know about related cultural traits or religious practices when studying in any industry? Yeah, I would say it definitely is. It's anthropology and in an organization. One of the things that I did when at my previous workplace was I was in charge of putting together the company calendar and recognizing, the different religious practices within the organization was really important in terms of, including which holidays we need to make sure we recognize and don't schedule important activities on. So I would say that, and you're not focusing on only one culture here too. You're having to recognize some of the different relationships across the thing. And sometimes too, it's helpful to recognize sort of your own cultural perspective and the cultural perspective of those that you're trying to work with. So for example, this is a very American situation, but when I was at SMG, we had certain clients that us as the staff, and we're all in the Midwest, which the Midwest is known for Midwest nice, where we're very polite. We don't, we usually are like, oh, would you please, thank you. It's all about being very nice. Whereas we had some clients that were on the East Coast that we were all like, wow, they're really mean because they're very brief and direct. And recognizing that that was a cultural difference could help you recognize, like, they're not really trying to be rude. That's just how they work and operate. Okay, if so, there's specific things we need to cover in case of industry and business anthropology. I would say when you enter any industry, you need to be an anthropologist and understand what's important and valued within that company or organization, because each organization has its own sort of unique culture. And in some cases, you can have even like subcultures within teams. So that's where that observation and research really comes in, and that you need to apply your skills to the environment that you're entering. So a lot of companies, you're going to have different abbreviations in language. For example, when I worked at SMG, I remember they kept talking about TA, and I was like, what's TA? And I realized eventually it was text analysis, which is really just the reading all the comments and analyzing them. How we apply business anthropology and women rural entrepreneurship. So I think there's a lot of different ways that you could apply business anthropology perspectives in trying to support women doing rural entrepreneurship. As I said, it's really about applying those skills to understand the populations you're trying to connect with, and recognize what those needs are, and then help develop solutions that are going to stick. I think one of the biggest things that we talk about in business anthropology is around developing buy-in. So a lot of anthropologists, and this, I didn't call this out as a separate field, but this is one, is change management. So there's a whole, it's similar to project management. There's like a whole sort of discipline focused on how do we get people to change what they're doing and do something new. So I would definitely recommend checking out some of the research around that. How business anthropology could be applied in protected forest areas through ecotourism. So yeah, if you're trying to work on building out ecotourism, I think there's a few ways you could tackle that. One is recognizing how do you prevent people from damaging the protected forest that they're visiting. So that's maybe some process and some environmental design in terms of, how do you create paths that discourage people from throwing trash or anything like that, as well as, how do you attract those customers as tourists? So what's some of the language or messaging that would appeal to them? What type of images they resonate with? For example, if you're trying to connect, and this is a pretty standard practice in the marketing industry, is doing focus groups. So you can kind of put together a messaging toolkit of like, this is what we're going to say to people, and then have a group of people react and tell you what they think about it. And in that case, you can sort of refine it and make it something that's going to resonate with people more.
I think that's the last question.
All right.
Thank you. As I was saying, you agreed for the webinar, doing webinar instantly, and we are very grateful that I think you have joined at 6 o'clock in the morning. You must be preparing for morning 4 a.m. And you have to rush for hospital also, and we remember it. So thank you very much. I would request Dr. Jayaprabhakar to give vote of thanks. Yes.
Thank you very much to the resource person, Jennifer Stupaker, madam, to kindly agreeing to deliver a lecture, and also it was fantastic, in fact. So it was excellent. The topic you covered, it's very relevant, the context of India and other part of it. And also, though you have not at all covered the situations in India, so what is happening in the US, we are always curious about that. That you clarified, many opportunities are there, not only for in particular country. It is widely, if you set the skills, that definitely will be asset to the organization or any kind of industry. So that our participant definitely, I hope that they got so much of information from your side, and also they clarified many doubts also. Hope that they got the satisfied with the answer, and also a reply from your side. With this, I am very thankful to you, ma'am. So kindly read to that, and also you divulge your time. And also probably now the timings, a time would be 7:45 or 8 o'clock in US. So you spend a lot of time, energy, everything for giving this webinar. Thank you so much. And also I must be thankful to my director as well as the Professor Kumar Gangadhar sir, Vice Chancellor of Chamber University, and also faculty from the Anthropology Department of Karnataka University and Mysore University, and our research scholars, students throughout all over India and outside India also. Some of the participants have joined. So thank you so much. And also Diakite is probably is from Egypt University. I'm thankful to all of you. Thank you so much. Thank you one and all. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Let's have a snapshot. If some of the participants can switch on your videos, we can have a snapshot of so that we can have a memory. Please kindly switch on your camera so that we can have it. Thank you.
Great.
Yes. Just a minute.
No, sir. No, sir.
Sir, can we order for the book of Jennifer?
Yes, sir. We will be sharing the link in the group, WhatsApp group. She will be sharing with us, and you can order the book there. Thank you very much, and have a great day, Jennifer, and good night to all of you who are joining in India. Namaste.